The views and opinions expressed in The Fact Is with Hollis Grant are those of Hollis Grant and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Droids Canada Network. Droids Canada Network does not take responsibility for any content or position produced by Hollis Grant and his show. Listener discretion is advised.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Fact Is. I'm your host, Hollis Grant, and on today's episode, we are going to be putting up a black square on our Facebook page. We're going to put down the words BLM, and we are going to support the movement of Black Lives Matter, the organization. Today, we're going to do a follow-up from a prior episode that you can go back and listen to on droidscanada.com. about Black Lives Matter and how great of an organization it is and how much money that they received over the last 2 years and all of that donation and what have they done with the money. In our prior episodes, we talked about BLM Canada and the wonderful role that Sandy Hudson was doing. We've talked about Sandy Hudson in her past and all the great work that this woman has done raising money for herself and organizations along the way. Now, we talked about the California home that was purchased with funds, but there's a little matter of some accounting discrepancies, some irregularities, some forms that hadn't been filled out, and some missing money, just a small amount of money, out of all the money that was raised during the summer of love, the summer of burning down cities, the summer of causing $2 billion worth of property damage, 45 deaths. Currently, the Black Lives Matter organization is being looked at by the IRS, being investigated by the FBI. Over $60 million. $60 million US dollars have gone missing. It's a small amount. But nonetheless, let's take a look at the WashingtonExaminer.com. This is from an article from January 28th, and this is part of the $60 million of where has it gone. Canadian Black Lives Matter activists are furious over the group's recent $8.1 million cash purchase of a mansion in downtown Toronto that once served as the headquarters of the Communist Party of Canada. When we did talk about Black Lives Matter on the past episodes, we did take a look at their mission statement. They make no secrets to hide. They are a Marxist organization. Karl Marx is the founder of communism, and it's just convenient that $8.1 million to buy the headquarters of the former Communist Party of Canada was quite shocking. It should show and should send alarm bells to anyone that's following along that this is an organization that does not care about black people. They only care about communism. The U.S. charity that serves as the face of the BLM movement provided the bulk of the funding for the purchase of the 10,000 square foot property in July. The purchase flew largely under the radar at the time, but anger has now reached a boiling point amid other revelations about BLM's management and its finances. For BLM Canada to take money from BLM Global Network Foundation for a building without consulting the community was unethical. Canadian BLM activists Sarah Jama and Sarah Sudi said in a recent statement, for BLM Canada to refuse to answer questions from young black organizers goes against the spirit of movement building. Jama and Saudi said they resigned from the steering committee of BLM's Toronto chapter after the leaders of BLM Canada refused to answer any questions about the purchase and tried to get them to sign expletive non-disclosure agreements. In other words, the NDA was designed as a constant threat of legal action against us, even though we were volunteering our time to a cause we believed in, the activist said. BLM Canada said the Toronto property, which they dubbed the Wild Seed Centre for Art and Activism, would serve as a, quote, vessel that seeks to nurture black radical creation in Toronto and beyond. Wild Seed is a transformed industrial space, a blank canvas reimagined as a multi-purposed, artist-run community, incubator, gallery, studio, and home to Black Lives Matter Canada, Wild Seed's website reads. Wild Seed is a trans-feminist, queer-affirming space politically aligned with supporting Black liberation work across Canada. Real estate records obtained by the Washington Examiner show BLM Canada, which also goes by M4BJ, purchased the property for $8.1 million on July 3, 2021. The purchase came just weeks after the group's co-founder, Patrice Colliers, resigned amid scrutiny of her own personal real estate purchase across the United States. BLM Canada co-founder Rodney DeVerlis said in July that BLM Canada purchased the property outright. BLM Canada's chairwoman, Sandy Hudson, said in an op-ed that the property came with a history of resistance, having previously housed the Communist Party of Canada for over 30 years. Canadian news outlets and activist groups reported in July that BLM's national arm, which appears to have been leaderless since Colliers stepped down in May, provided the bulk of the funding for BLM Canada's purchase of Wild Seed Centre. BLM Canada accessed a restricted capital grant from the movement's national arm to purchase the property, Hudson explained during an interview in August with the CBC. Hudson had also close ties with BLM's national arms. She claims on her National Speakers Bureau profile to sit on the Black Lives Matter Global Network Strategy Table, in addition to her service as the co-director of Black Lives Matter's Grassroots. Collier's spouse, Janaya Khan, also serves as a director of BLM Canada, according to the group's Canadian charity registration. BLM did not return numerous requests for comment asking how much it contributed to the purchase of the Toronto mansion, or whether Hudson or Khan played any role in its decision to provide funds for the property purchase. Hudson comes with her own history of alleged financial malfeasance. Hudson was sued in 2015 by her former employee, the University of Toronto Student Union, for allegedly approving $247,726 in overtime payment for work she never completed. All parties in the lawsuit settled in the matter of 2017. The University of Toronto Student Union issued a statement saying there was no evidence that Hudson committed fraud. However, the statement agreed she agreed to pay back a portion of the overtime payments in question. BLM revealed last February it raked in $90 million in 2020 from big corporations and individual donors after the police killing of George Floyd and the nationwide riots that followed. The group said it closed out 2020 with $60 million in its coffers. A coalition of 10 local BLM chapters came out against the movement's national arm in late 2020, alleging that the group provided little to no financial support to local activists while simultaneously offering no acceptable transparency surrounding its finances and operations. Now, we covered that on a past episode. Again, georgecanada.com. Take a look at all of our past episodes. But as you can see in this article, again, we've talked about Sandy Hudson. We've talked about how much money she took and how the university and her came to an agreement just to end things and just go on their way. And yet here she is again at the center of missing funds. Now, instead of $250,000, $250,000, she's in charge of $8.1 million and living in this mansion in Toronto, the former head of the Communist Party of Canada. Now, there's another article that's completely fascinating. The article was written on April 18th, 2020, and it's found on Yahoo News, and its title is Black Lives Matter co-founder addresses allegations of lavishly spending donation money. And I won't go through the entire article, but it does lay out how the founder, Patrice Cullors, spent $6 million in California on a property. It does not cover the other 3 mansions that she purchased elsewhere in the United States. But it goes on to talk about how they feel that it's unfair that Black Lives Matter has to answer to these questions. And they feel that it's more of an attack and that they're willing to answer these questions. Now, here's the part of the article that's most fascinating. Now, we'll talk about Dr. Melina Abdullah, who is a co-founder of the Black Lives Matter Los Angeles and head of Black Lives Matter Grassroots Network. Cullors and Abdullah emphasized that they welcomed honest criticism of their own leadership and the movement's actions, while distinguishing such feedbacks from unproductive attacks. Quote, I was trained as a community organizer and a public artist, Cullors explained, and in my training we were taught to see critiques as valuable, to see them as generative, and to see them as necessary, she added. However, what's happening now is not critique, it's attack. Questioned about the perceived lack of transparency from BLM leaders, Abdullah countered that what bothered me most about this latest round of attacks is that I got almost no outreach from anybody asking me to speak, while citing a few prominent black media personalities such as Roland Martin, who asked for and received comments from her on the matter. Abdullah expressed a desire for black media to fill the gap in reporting, including substantive criticism of the movement. We are not asking you to be unfair and cape for us, Abdullah said. We're asking you to be fair. Cullors admitted that BLM organizers could legitimately be criticized for moves that they made along the way. This is not an easy thing that we're doing, she explained. We're trying to literally create a movement for black people to undo white supremacy and undo patriarchy and undo all the things that have impacted us. And we're going to make mistakes along the way. And in those mistakes, we're going to learn from them. And that is the end of the article. So when you ask, where's the $60 million? That is an attack. That's an attack on them. And you're wrong for asking, where did the money go? You're wrong for asking for transparency. You're wrong for asking an organization that takes public money as a donation and has no accountability at all to spend that money. Where did it go? You can't ask that question. That's an attack. And what's wrong with it is that you didn't ask them to make comments. Or you asked the wrong person and the person just didn't give that message to the right person. You asked the secretary and perhaps the secretary was told, just say no to any request, because multiple news organizations have reached out to this organization for comment and they were not returned. So people have been asking what is going on, but you see, that's an attack. You can't ask for transparency. You just blindly give money because Black Lives Matter. Give tons of money, give everything, and don't question where the money's going. That's the true essence of Black Lives Matter, the organization. To become a communist. Because the best thing about communism is when you're on the top and you're rich, you don't care about the little people and you suppress the little people. And that's happened in communist regimes all over the world. I'd like to thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Fact Is. I'm your host, Hollis Grant, and you have yourself a great week.
Dan, what happens every Thursday?
That would be DCR Droids Canada Radio.
And what time is it out on Thursday?
That's from 9 till 11 p.m.
Dumb question, where do you find it?
You find that at accessradio.ca.
And what's the best part?
It's